Okay, welcome to another episode of the Change Your Life Anyway podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Stenberg.
And I'm the co-host, Yvonne McCoy.
And today we're talking about LinkedIn. It's how to start growing your business on LinkedIn. And I decided to put Yvonne on the hot seat because I've been dragging her kicking and screaming into LinkedIn. So we're going to dive right in. But as I said, if anybody wants to join us, if you have a specific question about your use of LinkedIn or have a comment or a suggestion, we'd love to have you join us. So Yvonne, I guess we'll dive right in.
I want to make sure I take notes because I know that when we finish this, there are going to be lots of things that I should do. The one thing that I would like to say before we get started is I just had an experience this past week where I was asked for a resume, and I haven't been asked for a resume in a really long time. And when I looked at my resume that I had, it really did not reflect what I was doing. It was not only was it not current, it just, it was for a totally different kind of position than I was looking for in this job. I mean, I had totally made a change. And so I think the very first thing to take a look at is, if you're like me and I put up a LinkedIn like years ago, the first thing to do is to just see whether or not it really reflects the business or the kind of clients that you want to attract right now.
Yeah, well, and it's a good idea to keep a current resume, even if you're an entrepreneur. I've been in business now 10 years, but I periodically, if you're bidding on projects, sometimes people just want to see a current resume. So I have kind of a couple on the go that I modify from time to time. If for no other reason than that I don't forget what I did, because sometimes that can happen when you've been in, had a career that's spanned more than about 5 minutes. So that's good suggestion, Yvonne.
Yeah. I mean, I had bios, but I didn't have a resume per se. So,
yeah. Well, I know you have some questions about LinkedIn. One of the things that I want to say first off the bat, if you're new to LinkedIn, absolutely, you must get a profile photo. If you don't have one, grab your cell phone and, find a blank wall and get somebody to click a picture or, go outside. It's really essential. A lot of people will not connect with you if you don't have a profile picture. And according to LinkedIn stats, I think you get something like 14 times more views of your profile if you have a photo. So first thing, if you don't have one, get one done. It doesn't have to be, the perfect headshot by a professional photographer. I mean, it's nice if you have that, but as long as, it's not you at the beach, you're good.
So I think one of the questions that I had was, does it make a difference as an entrepreneur if you have a personal LinkedIn or a business LinkedIn?
Okay, that's a good question. The business pages on LinkedIn are relatively new, and it's very different than, sort of the Facebook personal versus business page. So I think if you're on LinkedIn, you absolutely must have a personal profile, first of all. I think that because LinkedIn is for business, it's not like, on Facebook where you might be sharing cat photos or something. It's for business. You absolutely must have the profile. What the page is for, generally it's for larger companies, but there are certain parts of LinkedIn advertising that you can only do if you have a company page. There are a few sections of LinkedIn advertising that you can now do from your personal profile. So if you're not planning on doing any LinkedIn advertising at all, then you definitely, if you're a solopreneur, you don't have employees, you don't have a brand that's well known, I would say if you add a company page, it's just another thing that you have to manage and update, and it's more work for you. If you have a brand that's not your name and you have some employees and maybe you're going to have some activity on LinkedIn that's not just you, then maybe you want to consider that. If you're going to dive in with advertising, then absolutely. But unlike your LinkedIn profile where you can go and invite somebody, you can invite somebody to become a connection, on your page, you kind of have to wait for them to come to you. So it's it's a lot more challenging for a small business, particularly if you don't have a large brand where people are going to be searching because they want to become an employee or because they know your business. So if you're small, I would say don't worry about it yet. Get the LinkedIn profile going and start building your network. And when you're ready to jump in with advertising, then you can start thinking about it. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And you know me, I probably couldn't handle two at the same time anyway for, you know. The other question I have is that I get from time to time, I get people that I don't know who say they want me to join their network, or they want to become whatever you become on LinkedIn. And I have been hesitant to add them. And then I started doing a little bit of research between our last lab and today, and realizing that LinkedIn is really a way of networking. So I'm really kind of shooting myself in the foot, right, by not accepting?
Well, it sort of depends. And one of the things about LinkedIn is that you really need to know before you start connecting, particularly if you're going to start sending connections, is there's kind of two groups of people on LinkedIn, particularly people who've been on LinkedIn from the beginning. And there's like what I call the open networkers, and actually open networkers call themselves open networkers, and selective connectors. So open networkers are people that go on LinkedIn and their attitude is, I don't know who's going to be of value to me and my networking or who I can help until I get to know them. So I'm willing to accept invitations from anyone. Selective connectors are exactly that. They're more selective. And the most extreme I've seen is, I've seen people who say, I will not connect with you on LinkedIn unless we've met in person or spoken on the phone. That's the most extreme. Now, the thing to be aware of is some of the people who are very selective connectors will actually get offended if you send them an invitation to connect and they don't know you. So you need to be careful. The other thing that can happen is if you get an invitation to connect, and you decline it, you have the option of marking it as spam. If you get too many of those spam flags, you can actually get your LinkedIn account suspended. And you go in, what's called LinkedIn jail. No, one of the nice things about LinkedIn as compared to, say, Facebook is if you end up in LinkedIn jail, at some point you will get contacted by a customer service person from LinkedIn, and you'll get, shame on you for breaking our rules and doing bad things. And if you promise never to do it again, you will get reinstated. Whereas Facebook, if you get put into Facebook jail, you may never find out what you did wrong, and you may not be able to get back in. So that's something to be aware of, is just to know that some people will be offended if you send them an invitation when you don't know them, which is kind of stupid because LinkedIn has over the years has changed. And right now LinkedIn is always pulling up, like when you log in, often we'll see, do you know this person or invite this? They've made it really easy for you to connect with people you don't know, and yet it's telling you shouldn't. So LinkedIn kind of has this split personality when it comes to connections. But sort of to answer your question, then you said about, should I accept invitations, is you need to decide of what kind of networking you want to do on LinkedIn. I think if you're using LinkedIn only to connect with people you actually know in the real world, I think all you're doing is using LinkedIn as a backup to your Rolodex or Outlook or whatever it is you use to keep track of contacts, the stack of business cards on your corner of your desk, whatever that is. So you need to decide, like, who is worth connecting with? Who do I not want to connect with? I know some people who say, well, I don't want to connect with any competitors. On the other hand, I know people who, and myself, I love connecting with other social media consultants because often they specialize in a different area than I do. Sometimes we can, compare notes, compare best practices. Maybe I've gotten referrals from other social media people because I specialize in something different. So you have to, have that conversation with yourself. Who will I accept? Who will I not accept?
They commit people who talk to themselves.
No, it's only if you answer back.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm kind of confused. I'll be honest with you. As someone who's not done a whole lot with my LinkedIn, And now I've said, all right, I want to use LinkedIn to maybe get new clients. Would I be better to be an open networker, or would I be better to be a selective connector? And well, if I go onto LinkedIn, and I see someone that I want to connect with, how do I know if they're like a selective connector?
Okay, I'll answer that question first, and then I'll go back to your other question about, how to decide what to be. Open networkers on LinkedIn, like people who are considering themselves open networkers, will usually have somewhere on their profile say they're an open networker, or if you look at the groups they belong to, they'll belong to a LION, which stands for LinkedIn Open Networker Group. Or if you see somebody, sometimes you'll see in somebody's professional headline, you'll see their email address, or somewhere really high up in their profile, their email address. That's their sort of cue to say, okay, you can connect with me, even if you don't know, don't know me. You can, when you click other, it asks for an email address, so you can use that email address. So that's a sign of that they're an open networker. If they're a selective connector, it can sometimes be a little more challenging. So, but there's a few ways that you can sort of get the invitation or get to know them a little bit before you invite them. So one of the things is you can see who are your mutual connections. Do you have somebody who is a connection that's connected to them, but you're not connected? So say I'm connected to Joe, Yvonne, and you want to be connected to Joe. You could ask me to do a LinkedIn introduction. So I can introduce Joe to you and say, Joe, I think you should connect with Yvonne. So that's a nice way to get around the this idea that somebody might be offended of getting an invitation out of the blue. Is, I've introduced the two of you, and now you can, it's like at a networking event if I go and introduce you. So that's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is, oftentimes people will have on their profile a list of LinkedIn groups that they belong to. So you can go join a group that they belong to, if it makes sense for you to join it, and start, kind of engaging with them within the group. And once they've had a chance to get to know you a little bit, you could then send them an invitation to connect and say, hey, we're both a member of this group. I like what you said about X. Would you mind connecting? So that's kind of a way to get around that.
Okay. We have a question. It says, how do you separate your LinkedIn accounts if you have more than one business?
So that's challenging. And I do believe, I'd have to go back and look at the actual rules, but I do believe LinkedIn doesn't want you to have multiple profiles. So that might be a case where it might be worthwhile to have a LinkedIn business page rather than just the personal profile. What type of businesses are they? Are they completely different, or are they, are they somewhat related? That can make a difference as well. So Marcia, if you want.
Yeah, I was going to say we'll wait for that answer.
Yeah. So while we're waiting for Marcia, if you want to jump on the call, that would be great too.
Here she is. She says, I work full-time and have a craft business.
Okay.
So does that mean like a professional profile for what she's doing full-time, and then one for her? Okay, so she's full-time in the pharma sales. So would that be more like a professional profile for the pharma sales and then a business one for the crafts?
Yeah, you might consider doing that, although it depends how, like if you really need to keep that crafting business separate from your pharmaceutical sales, which I suspect might be something that you want to do, then that might be a way to go. Another option is if it's okay that people know you have this side business, you could certainly list it as a second, experience on your profile. So it really depends on, do you need it to be completely separate? You know, because sometimes some employers still, even though it's 21st century, are still kind of concerned about moonlighting and don't want people to have these side businesses. So in that case, maybe you want to have it completely separate. So that's a personal choice, and I guess it sort of depends. I've seen some people very successfully who have, you know, maybe a full-time job and a, you know, part-time business, include both on their profile. It also depends. Are you planning on using LinkedIn? Like, you know, should you decide you need to change positions and go to a different company? Are you going to use your LinkedIn as a chance to find another pharma sales job, or, you know, do you want to use LinkedIn to focus just on your craft business? Another thing I might say is your craft business might do better on Facebook anyway, or do on something like Pinterest, that's very visual, or something like Etsy, which is for crafting. So I know that's not exactly a hard and fast yes or no, do this, but I hope it's kind of a bit of a gray area.
But that's the suggestion for Etsy, I think, is a really good one. I mean, my daughter uses that a lot.
Yeah, most employers these days do look through side jobs. It sort of depends on the culture of the corporation, but I do know that there are an awful lot of people who still feel like moonlighting is a bad thing, even though I think very few people have one job, and they certainly don't keep it for their entire career. So I think it's short-sighted for employers to say don't moonlight, but you have to certainly protect your primary source of income if that's what you need, right?
So let's do this. I think that, probably the lesson, the takeaway from this is if you have several jobs or several interests, they may not all be best in the same place for a variety of reasons, such as Etsy might be a much better place for craft than it would be for LinkedIn. So can we go through some of the things that either as a new person or as somebody who has kind of let their LinkedIn just kind of sit there, so they really are kind of starting again, what are a couple of things that we should start with? I mean, one of the things you said already is that you absolutely need a profile photo. And I know one of the things that you said to me was that the description, is it called description? Yeah.
The professional headline, which is that little, it's the sort of a 2-line phrase next to your name that describes what you do. So the default is whatever your current job position that you have in your experience says, it says that. So say you have one of the big mistakes I see a lot of entrepreneurs make is that maybe they'll call themselves president, and they'll be president of ABC Corporation. And if I don't know what ABC Corporation is, I have no idea what you do as president. So if that's what your headline says is president of ABC Corporation, that doesn't tell me anything about you. But if you say that you're a business coach that helps entrepreneurs grow their business from 5 figures to 6 figures, that tells me a little bit more about what you do. President of washing the dishes at my house. Depends what you're trying to do.
All right. So one of the other questions we had was, how important is a professional headshot or an amateur, versus an amateur picture?
Certainly ideal would be to have a professional headshot, and it doesn't have to be really expensive. The last time I got a photo done is I actually went on an online job board and found a photography student who was, offering his services, and I hired him to do my photos. Did a great job. I got to help a student out, get started and get some money, and got some really nice photos. So ideally, I think it is a good idea. If you can't afford it, or you just don't have time yet, maybe you want to get something up today and somewhere down the road you're going to get the photo, it's okay to do an amateur shot as long as it looks professional. So if you're dressed the way you would dress when you see a client, and it's not a picture of you at the beach or a family photo at Christmas where your head, you've just cropped out your head, but they can see the tree in the background. Like, if it's something like that, I would say that's definitely a no-no, because people on LinkedIn are expecting things to be more professional. But there's nothing wrong with, getting your cell phone and, finding a spot where there's good light and there's kind of a plain background, or a picture of you at your desk even, but as long as it looks professional.
The other possibility is, and I've done this twice, is I've gone to, on Groupon, found discounts for getting photos. And the two that I did, they were like glamour shots, something like that. But, when I went in, I explained that I wanted them for professional, for professional photos, that I didn't want, sleazy looking photos or whatever. But you got to take photos with a couple of different outfits. So I got a nice photo that I really like, where I'm sitting on a chair, that I used for my speaker's photo. And then I got some good headshots. And then I got a couple that were just personal, that were just a little bit more personal. And the fee was really reasonable for the amount of photos and stuff that I got. So that's another way to take a look at that if you want to get a bunch of photos.
Yeah. I mean, even just, most departments like Walmart and Sears still have photo studios. Although, honestly, I find if you call a local photographer, you will probably get more options like what you had, Yvonne, than if you, for the same price as what you would pay at a department store. So, I mean, there's definitely lots of options, but as long as you look professional, it doesn't look like you're at the beach or at a family dinner, I think that's okay. Just also make sure it's large enough, because one of the things that happened over the last couple of years is LinkedIn really made these profile photos much larger, and they went for a long period. And I still occasionally come across somebody who's been on LinkedIn for a while, and they still have the small photo, so it's kind of, there's a little teeny tiny thumbnail and then a bunch of gray around it. So you want to make sure it's large enough.
Okay.
Just so that it's more modern.
So we've got the picture, we've got the description. What's the next thing that we need to know about?
The thing that I think a lot of people miss is the summary. A lot of people think, oh, I've got this experience section where I've filled in all my jobs. What do I need to do the summary for? But the summary is the section where you can show a little more personality. The experience section really doesn't matter how good of a writer you are. It kind of looks like a resume. But the experience section lets you show your personality, lets you sell a little bit, lets you highlight different parts of your business. Maybe, most entrepreneurs have a couple of different services or products that they sell. So maybe for the fall, you're focusing on this particular service that you're promoting, but then come January, you're going to do something else. So you can change that part up a little bit. Talk about specifically about who you help, what you do for them, how they can get started. It's more of a sales piece than any other part of your LinkedIn profile, so you can really use that. The other importance of the summary is, so say I'm on LinkedIn and I'm looking for whatever service you provide. If I type in some keywords into LinkedIn because I'm looking for somebody, the words that you have in your summary weigh more heavily than in other parts of your LinkedIn profile. So if you've used some important keywords in your summary, you're more likely to show up in a search than if you have not filled out your summary at all.
Okay. So we have a question from Joey. It says, what about linking your professional profile to, say, a business page? And then after that, can we do a couple of things that we can use that's going to actually grow our business from LinkedIn?
Sure, absolutely. Well, we did talk about that at the beginning of the call, Joey, but basically my recommendation for the average small business, so a solopreneur, a consultant, a coach, somebody who doesn't have a lot of staff, is generally, I don't think you need a business page unless you're going to dive in really deep with LinkedIn advertising. There is a couple of types, I think one type of LinkedIn advertising that you can now do from your personal profile. If you want to go into all the types of LinkedIn advertising, you need to do them from a business page. But otherwise, I would say for most people, it's just going to double your workload because you have to manage your profile and you have to manage your business page and you have to be posting to both. And like, we're already too busy. So it's not going to give you the bang for your buck unless you're going to be diving into advertising.
Okay,
Okay, good.
So aside from posting to LinkedIn, and I think there are probably some extra things that we can do about posting. So for instance, one of the things that you've shared with me is that you can actually post content on LinkedIn.
Yeah, there's the LinkedIn publishing platform, which started just over a year ago, where they opened it up to everybody. Before that was in beta, you had to get an invite to publish. But where you can basically publish full-length articles, you can add photos, you can format it, put subheading, you can have links. And this is one of the most powerful tools on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has made a lot of changes over the years, and I don't like all of them, but this one I'm in love with. This is, both for me and for my clients, is one of the most powerful ways to get your name, get your profile in front of new eyeballs. One of the things that I've been doing for my business is I go back through my blog. I've been blogging for, I don't know, I think something like 8 years now. And I'll find blog posts that have done really well, and I republish them on LinkedIn. Now, usually if they're older, I update them a little bit, but some of them I've published word for word what I put on my blog, make sure I add a photo, and I put an author box at the bottom, which, maybe I'll direct people to my free report or to sign up for a free consultation or whatever it is I happen to be promoting that day. But otherwise, it's word for word, and I'm getting a huge amount of traffic of people viewing my profile as a result of seeing these articles. And one of the interesting things is, in the stats that LinkedIn gives you, 75% of the people who are finding these articles I publish on LinkedIn are coming from Google. So they're not even coming from within LinkedIn or my personal network. They're just coming from Google. And these are articles that I published on my blog that are already getting good traction. But because LinkedIn is such a big website, there's so many people on it, there's so many people going to it, it gets better Google juice than my blog. So it's an absolutely fabulous way to get in front of people. And I've had people call me up and say, I read your article, how can we work together? And it's like, awesome. That's the best sales conversation to have, when it's not trying to convince somebody to work with you, but let's talk about how it's going to work.
So first of all, from a coaching perspective, repurposing is a wonderful thing to begin with. And second of all, what Andrea said, if she goes back on her material, I had that experience this last spring and summer where I was teaching a really long, like an 18-week class, and was looking for content and hoping not to have to start from scratch, and was absolutely astonished and amazed at all the articles and research I'd already done on different things, that I could almost go, just search my computer for the topic and come up with a whole range of things that I could then either update, or, as Andrea said, some of them were ready to go just the way they were, especially worksheets that I had done in the past, were really good. So a coaching piece of advice is always to try to find 3 uses for whatever you are doing. So you may have an article that you've already written. You may break it down into different parts to be able to link, to post part as a blog, and maybe post part of it to LinkedIn. If you have a newsletter, or if you have something else that you can do. And in terms of systems thinking, probably one of the best things to do is to think about how this is going to attract, or how this is going to impact your system, upgrade it and attract the kinds of clients that you're looking for now. So if you say the clients that I'm looking for in 2016 are going to be looking for a specific thing, that's the thing that you need to start blogging about or posting on LinkedIn now.
Yeah, great idea. And that actually just reminded me, when you said about repurposing, another thing on LinkedIn that's relatively new in the last few years is you can now add multimedia to your profile. Way back in the early days when LinkedIn started, the only image or anything that was on your profile was your thumbnail photo, and there was nothing else. Now you can add video, you can add slideshows. In fact, LinkedIn now owns slideshare.net, which is a place where you can upload PowerPoints and have them be available for the public. You can embed them in your profile. You can add documents or photos. So say you're a professional photographer, have some photos attached to your profile. If you home stager. You could have before and after shots on your profile. If you've done any YouTube videos that maybe you've done some speaking, or that talk about showcase your expertise, that let people know what it is you do, give them a taste of who you are and what it's like to work with you. Embed them on your profile.
Okay, so all right, so being able to post something is definitely a way to increase your credibility and your visibility. The formula that I use is credibility plus visibility plus sustainability equals profitability. So posting videos or posting articles are going to make you more credible, seem like more of an expert in your field, and it's going to give you more visibility. So what would be the next thing that we want to take advantage of?
Well, one of the things that I think is used badly by a lot of people on LinkedIn is LinkedIn groups. And people who've been on LinkedIn for a while have a love-hate relationship with groups, because not all groups are created equal. Some groups have really devolved into spam fests where everybody joins and all they do is post links to their latest blog post or a link to their latest product, and it's just like, look at me, but nobody's having any conversations. Whereas the original idea around groups was to foster discussion. So if you can find a group, depending on what your goals are, like, so if one of your goals is to grow your business, get new clients, can you find a group where your ideal clients are hanging out and you can participate in the discussion without being spammy or, kind of that's, the Herb Tarlick salesman? If you can actually, be helpful and be participating in the group, that can be a great way to get you in front of potential clients and to, give them a chance to get to know you before you start kind of getting them into your sales funnel. A good way to kind of gauge, is this going to be a good group or not, is it a moderated group? Is there, like, do you have to apply to come in, or is it open to anybody? Do they have group rules? When you create a group on LinkedIn, it gives you the opportunity to create rules. What is allowed, what isn't allowed, and does the moderator make you follow them? Because just about every group that I've joined has rules and says, don't spam the group. But I see a lot of groups that are still allowing spamming. So you have to see, is the moderator of the group actually moderating? Are there, if there is more than one moderator, because as an owner of a group, you can add other people to help administer the group. So say there's 4 or 5 administrators on the group, you could go, oh, maybe they're pretty active on making sure people aren't spamming. So that can be a good handle on how to determine if it's a good group. Another thing to do is create your own group.
All right. Can I go back to what you were just saying before? If you belong to a group, can you, if they're having a topic that they're talking about, right? Can you say, this is an article that might be helpful to you, whether it's your article or somebody else's article, but if it's your article and you put your information in the author box, doesn't that kind of cover you from being, from being considered spam or something like that?
I think so. I mean, you have to see what the rules of the group are and the culture of the group. But if somebody's having a discussion about, how to manage my time as a small business owner, and you happen to have, a great tip on how to do that, and you can add that to the discussion and say, this might be helpful to people because, and give a little sentence explaining why it's helpful. But yeah, that can absolutely be a valuable part of the conversation. Where it becomes a problem is if you just go in, there's no discussion happening, and you just post a link and say, check out my latest blog post. That's spammy. If it's a legitimate part of the conversation, most groups find that acceptable. There are some groups I've seen where they absolutely say, don't post your own stuff. So you have to respect the culture of the group.
Okay. Sorry. On to the next thing.
Yeah, so
group.
creating your own group can be really helpful. One of the things that I did is I live in a smaller geographic area. I'm not in a big urban center. And so there was no geographic group for our area. So I created one. I created a local group, and started inviting people. And last check, I think we're over 600 members. So, and these are mostly small business owners. So and because I'm the group owner, I can send messages to everybody in the group. I can, encourage discussion, but just by the fact that I'm the head of the group gives me a little bit of more visibility and a little bit more authority. So, the visibility and credibility that you were talking about, and I think sustainability, because I'm the one that's there. I mean, there are other people having discussions, but I'm the owner of the group. People see that. I periodically will send messages to people, or I'll post a question. Because it's a small geographic area, I try to do every month or two, I'll post a new thread that says networking opportunities. Please post if you know there's a networking event or something. So it gets me in front of there, but it gets other people engaging. So that can be a great way to get yourself in front of your group. Now, it doesn't have to be on a geographic basis. Maybe there's a particular topic related to your client base. Now, what you don't want to do is put your company name, because people don't give a crap about your company. They care about whatever they care about. But if you can find, something, maybe your ideal clients are, vice presidents at Fortune 100 companies. Maybe you can create a group to solve a problem that vice presidents of corporate, Fortune 100 companies might need to deal with, and have them a discussion about that.
Let me also say that when you're growing your business, one of the ways, really powerful ways to grow your business, is finding opportunities with partnerships. Whether they are people who are complementary to your business, whether they, if how you see sometimes that the people that are in the pool business are also in the snow, cleaning business, because they complement each other. Well, if you can find businesses that complement you, and go into their groups, that their people may need you, instead of, if you make a connection, you're not just making one connection, you're making a connection with potentially all of their clients, that they have somebody that they can recommend. And it's also a good way to maybe put together partnerships and ways to work on things together. And I find a lot of entrepreneurs are very much stuck on kind of the one-on-one client. And I think that one of the questions that you have to ask yourself and ask other people as well is, are there other areas that we can work together? Just like I just said, I had this opportunity to put in a resume. It was for a specific engagement, but I said to them, you work with a lot of community organizations, and I'm sure all of them could benefit from having some coaching. Let's talk about the opportunities that might be out there, either with individual organizations, or maybe we can put together a master group or a group coaching thing. And she was like, oh my God, this is great. I never thought about this, because they really could use some help. So look at your target, who your end user is going to be. But don't forget to look at other people who have entree to those people, or who have a complimentary service.
And that actually leads to one of my secret weapons when it comes to any social media, but particularly with LinkedIn, is what I call the virtual cup of coffee. Anytime I've been able to foster really good relationships with, say, complementary businesses, or somebody that might be able to send me referrals, is, we've met on LinkedIn, whether it's through a group or, just, an introduction, or just sometimes random, invitations to connect. And, I'll send them a message and say, hey, I'm really interested in what you do. I have no idea how, what might come of this, but would you be willing to get on the phone or Skype or Google Hangout or something, and let's just have a virtual cup of coffee and find out something about each other. And that has been a very valuable tool for me, because the virtual cup of coffee lets people know, I'm not trying, this isn't a sales pitch. It's just a casual conversation. There's no commitment other than to chat. And I've been able to get some really good business connections from that, whether it's somebody even just that's going to promote my webinar for me, or somebody who can send me a resource that I need, or somebody who's going to send me referrals, or, somebody who's going to do joint venture project together, or do a blab with me like you and I do. So using that, that little phrase, do you want to have a virtual cup of coffee and just chat, can be really valuable. And I really think getting off of social media, as much as I love social media, I'm a social media consultant, I think the real power is use the social media to connect, and then get the heck offline and talk to somebody. Whether, if you're in a local area, meet for coffee. If you're across the country or across the world, Skype, Google Hangouts, whatever. Best way to make deep connections with people.
And I think the other thing that's really important, and this is a little bit off topic, but I think it's really important, is that you have a really clear idea of who your ideal client is. And it's one of those things that evolves, so you may not know right away, but as you get clearer and clearer, so that when you sit down and talk to somebody that you're networking with, you can say, my ideal client is such and such and such. What is your ideal client? So that you're not sending people to them that don't fit what you're into. And I just had a situation where I had both of the engagement that I just talked to and another personal client were referrals from somebody that I know that we've had long conversations about this, and it was like, these are great referrals, as opposed to people who don't really know what you do, or they, and you get these kind of weird So I would take some time to figure out what you what your ideal client is. And I heard somebody talking about network, where he basically did what you talked about with the virtual cup of coffee, but he did it in person, where he would sit at a Starbucks and maybe have, send out emails to all these people and set up appointments, let's talk on this day at this, place. And he would give them a worksheet. Tell me who your ideal client is. This is and he had a printed up copy of his. And he said that worked wonderfully.
Yeah. So the key is, I think, is to do it regularly and to be genuine. Like, don't set up these virtual cups of coffee when it really secretly you're going to try to get them to be a client. Really make it genuinely a chance to connect. And then, if you're having the virtual cup of coffee and something in your head goes ding, 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 this person is an ideal client for me, put it in your system to follow up with them down the road. And, maybe at a later date, you can have a sales conversation with them when they've given you permission for that. And actually, that's another feature on LinkedIn that's really helpful, is you can actually set reminders on individual people's profiles to follow up with them. So if you don't have a CRM that you're using, this can be really simple. Is this, you meet somebody, maybe you've had a virtual cup of coffee. You can also keep notes, so you can remind, that only you can see. So you can say, I had a virtual cup of coffee with Yvonne on November 3rd at 2 p.m. and this is what we discussed. I can set a reminder that maybe I need to follow up with Yvonne in two weeks. So it can just sort of keep your networking organized, particularly if you're somebody who kind of forgets things. It's nice to have these little reminders. At least I find it.
Okay, so we purposely said we were going to keep our blabs to 45 minutes. We're like a minute over. Do you have one really fantastic thing that you still think we need to know?
I guess the biggest thing is be consistent on LinkedIn. Is, schedule it in your calendar. If you use an online calendar like, Google Calendar, make it a recurring thing. So maybe every Tuesday from 9 to 10, you're going to spend some time networking. And maybe every Friday from, 1 to 1:30, you're going to respond to invitations to connect, or, whatever it is. Just schedule it in, be consistent, and just keep focusing on connecting with people and developing those relationships.
I have to say that's one of the things that you've taught me is to schedule all my social media, because otherwise I prefer not to deal with it. And even though I'm not good, I am definitely much, much better. Just as an aside, one of the other things that we want to let you know is that the two of us are going to be doing a teleseminar, and we're also going to be doing a class in December. So you should kind of keep, putting your head in. Do you have those dates close by or no?
No, I don't. But I did just post in the chat box if anybody wants. There's a link to my free report, 4 ways to quickly get new clients from social media, and Yvonne's I Am Ecstatic life planning tool. So if you sign up for one of those, you will get notified when we have the webinar and the course. And I've put my LinkedIn profile on there. If you send me an invitation to connect and you say in your invitation, hey, I watched the blab, I want to connect, I promise to accept. I won't mark you as spam.
Great, fantastic. And so, what our teleseminar is going to be about how to finish 2015 strong so that you can have an even better 2016. So we think it's a really good topic. So stay tuned, hook up with us. So from Yvonne McCoy, I guess.
And Andrea Stenberg.
Have a great day and the rest of this week.
And we'll hope to see you next week on our next blab. Bye, everyone.
Bye.